dude, this button keeps unbuttoning, so if my chest is showing, my bad.
That's for all the aunties out there.
It's out for the aunties out there on the res, bro. Just got all the aunties. Is it recording?
Yeah, we're live.
Oh man, this is gonna be part of the spoofs or something, bro. Are you gonna have one of those?
I might, yeah.
Okay, cool.
The TikTok clips. So,
That's gonna be funny. That's gonna be funny.
I'll clip that.
Dope. All right.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming out and being patient with me. And I really wanted you to be my first interview because I feel like you and I were akin. We're both young guys. We both kind of got started in a similar way, where we were attracted to the culture through other means like music and then we just dove in and we realized that we didn't have elders necessarily on our shoulder showing us the way, but that didn't stop us. And I love and I appreciate that about you. So thank you for coming out and being my first interview for Drum Circle News.
No, of course. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for reaching out. And like I always say, there's no mistake. There are no mistakes. For example, we're out here instead of the library.
Yeah.
There's medicine all over. We got red-tailed hawks. We got black sage.
Yeah.
We're outside next to the tree nation, right here at the grass. Like, doesn't beat anything like this, man.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you again.
Yeah. So you just got back from, you said fire holding?
Yes, I was firekeeping at a festival, Lightning in a Bottle in Bakersfield. It's been happening for, I believe this is the 21st year they've had it. And I've personally been there for three times, 2019, 2023, and 2024. But each year has been a completely different experience for me. And first year was just as a participant. Second year was full on operations production, out there for a month, working.
A month?
Yeah.
So what's lightning in a bottle? It sounds insane. Sounds like you're out there charged up.
It's, I mean, it depends. It depends on the context. It depends, like anything else, what you surround yourself with, right?
Yeah.
It's a camp out festival. There's electronic music. There's live bands. There's artists. It's a very beautiful, interactive festival where
I've been to like a full moon festival out before. They do like a week-long type of deal.
Very similar. Very similar. It's interesting because there's just a full moon on Thursday. So that does happen. That energy is very present. But like anywhere else, you have both sides of the spectrum.
So this is EDM.
There's EDM, live music. It's all kinds of things. The beautiful part about it is that in the mornings, there's a lot of holistic workshops happening, whether it's education on permaculture, on the aspects of water, another elders coming from all over the place. To be more specific, we have elders from the Diné Nation, from Hawaii, from up north in Washington. I don't know the exact names, and we also have an elder from that land, the Tejon tribe, I believe, who blesses the land every single day when the sun's about to set, which is the time we actually light up the fire.
Oh, man.
Yeah, from sunset to sunrise, we always have the sacred fire. That's what it's called, on during the night, to keep the place grounded and cleared. And as we like to call the sacred fire, the heart of the festival. So it's a beautiful space for people to take a break from the chaos that's happening around the festivities, to come and reflect and pray and just ground and be. And to kind of come in full closure with my experiences this year, I decided to not go out there for a month because I have all these other projects, but the fire called me to go back. So I'm going to say yes. Of course, if I'm being called to go keep fire, that's an opportunity to not only practice, but also to be praying every single day to bring that medicine to people that need it within that space. And a lot of people that go into these locations, they have no idea about anything about this. They just see a fire, but there's a connection, there's a medicine, there's a culture and teachings behind it. And that's how we're there to provide that in a very, I guess you could say, expansive, universal way where they can understand.
So yeah, and the Mexica culture, fire is really important, right? Where you're giving your energies to the fire, whether they're like good or bad, and it's like a purification kind of thing.
100%, 100%, and not just Mexica, but in my opinion, like the whole human race. So one thing I like to educate people on is this fire here, this elemental is conscious. It's alive in ways where we can't understand it, and at the same time, it connects to every single human around the world. Doesn't matter what nation you're from. Doesn't matter where you come from. We all come from the same fireplace. All of our ancestors shared the same technology. If anything, this fire is a representation of our sun, the father, the element of the fire here to transmute it, to bring life. So this is why we call it grandfather fire. And you know, the list goes on.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many creation stories.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not just Mexica, but there's a commonality with all cultures around the world. So
yeah, that's amazing. So I guess we never officially introduced you to the camera. We just we're connected, and so I didn't think about it. But Sal, right? And you also go by Cosmic. And yeah, so how would you describe yourself to someone who's never met you? What's your...
Well, it really depends on the context.
Yeah.
Like, what's our setting, right? Where are we?
Yeah.
In a professional setting, I'm gonna say my name, my full name. Oh, hello, my name is Salvador. I'm gonna give them the handshake.
Right.
If we're in ceremony, then I'll say my ceremony name, Chalchi Huitzili, which is after I got my tonali from it's in Nahuatl, which means jade hummingbird. So Chalchi means jade. Huitzili, in other words, Huitzilin is hummingbird, but together, Chalchi Huitzili. And that was given to me after being in service for many years. I never really exposed it like that. And even online per se, I don't have my full name out there because I work with all kinds of people, you know, and that's to break confidentiality. I don't want a lot of those people within that business world to know what exactly I do in these ways of life.
That's interesting. So why would that be?
It depends.
Do you feel like it's like, so you're working within like a predominantly white setting that, you know, you don't necessarily want to present yourself in that manner, or is it...
It's more of working with kids, you know, working with kids, but it's more like the parents. I don't want the parents to find me out there in the world and they see this, and not everybody knows about this. They see something like this, like, oh, what is this guy doing? If they could, we all have prejudice. It's a normal, natural thing. It's a human trait. And for people that have no clue, like if they see your shirt, they'll just see a shirt of me. I'm like, oh, that's a beautiful regalia they're wearing, brother. You know, I know that comes from, I'm just gonna assume here, probably Mexico.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's just like noticing the patterns, noticing some of the artwork that you have on. I know where it comes from, somewhere from Turtle Island, right? Same thing with my shirt. Comes from Mexico too, Michoacan to be more specific. But and primarily it's just us now that the children, the kids, teenagers, doesn't matter what age, they have the power of the phone. In other words, they're exposed to a lot of things, and that's the last thing I want the kids to find is me, and then they see my life that's a little bit more private, right? Same thing. I work in facilities with people that are recovering from drugs and alcohol. You know, and that's another thing. I want to keep this side of my life private from that, even though it's not private. It's just my name isn't really out there.
I understand, especially when you're talking about ceremony and people who aren't familiar with that. Some people might have a different interpretation about what's going on. And,
exactly.
Yeah. It is kind of sad. Some people might even look at it and be like, oh, that's witchcraft. And then they don't even understand that it's just healing. And it's the same as almost meditation or connecting and praying to God. Like if you're a Christian and you go into church, you know, the Temescal, the ceremonies you do, I would equate that to like a church-like ceremony, but in a different way. And so if you wanted to speak about that, I'd love to hear about the different ceremonies you're doing and how you got into that.
Absolutely. And you know, I'll actually, before I jump into that, I would actually start with where everything started really, and how this path that I'm on, this red road, this yellow road, this white road, this black road, there's so many roads, you know, but this way of life, walking in beauty, as I like to call, and unfolded organically in my life through the sport of lacrosse. Not a lot of people know what it is. Not a lot of us know what it is, because it's looked at as a rich sport, but in reality, it's an indigenous sport.
Yeah, the stick games.
The stick game.
We have stick games up up north of the Yurok tribe. We do that every year. So
Hmm.
I definitely, yeah.
Exactly. So that was my personally, that was my first activation. As I started to study a little bit more, I was like, whoa, like this game is called the medicine game,
Hmm.
or we play for the creator. And that was like surface level. This is me in grade school. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And even though I was exposed to a lot of things in the Mexica culture, but the education behind it, I didn't really know it because my parents, I'm first generation Mexican, by the way, even though I'm Mexica and Purepecha from my mother and Mexica from my father. My parents were in survival mode, trying to make ends meet, trying to provide for the family. And as a kid, I didn't understand. As an adult, I'm like, I understand. You don't want to expose that energy and that trauma that they carry to your children because
Hmm.
you're trying to provide for them. But going back to the game of lacrosse, it was a beautiful sport that gave me so much, gave me opportunity, gave me access to different parts of the city, different parts of the state, even going out of state. I was very fortunate to be sponsored to go to lacrosse camp, to play for travel teams that cost hundreds, even thousands of dollars. Look, I was very fortunate, and Creator blessed me with the opportunity to be doing these things for free. And what that did, that allowed me to build bridges with other relatives that were white, other relatives that were in different cities, and it allowed me to understand and not be so judgy, because I didn't grow up with white people. I grew up
Right.
in a predominantly, I guess you could say, Latino, Hispanic, and Black society. I grew up in Watts, California, so that was a very interesting and place that taught me a lot. But it does not define who I am as a person,
Right.
right?
Right.
So with that said, with the exposure of these different cultures and different relatives that don't look necessarily like us, it allowed me to find a common space and a common ground of the sport, of the medicine. And I understood why it was called the medicine game. Like anything else could be medicine. It was my outlet to release whatever it is I was going through personally, and which allowed me to actually play in college for a couple of years. And from there, I started coaching, and then I'm still coaching. I just finished lacrosse season with my young girls.
Nice.
So I've this game has given me so much, where I've given so much back,
Hmm.
just in a nutshell. And there's a lot of details, but I'll pause there. But through the sport of lacrosse, I met an indigenous teammate. Don't know what tribe he's from. However, he sent me a peyote song from a Native American church. It was a Dene song, Navajo in other words, and it was called Good Relations by Kevin Yazzie.
Mm.
And that song changed my life. I was going through a lot of things personally, physically, post surgery, that caused, like, flipped a switch, changed my mindset, slapped my ego. And through that allowed me to go deep within myself through meditation, through sin science, through even like the basic practice of yoga.
Mm.
Yoga's not even from here. Yoga's from India. That's a whole other devotion. However, that allowed me to give me a stepping stone to go in deeper within myself, and to eventually discover ceremony in a sacred way. And through ceremony in a sacred way, it unfolded through everything that I do: the music industry, the sport, radically expressing myself in these environments to attract the right people in my life. That eventually led me to being invited to a beautiful setting that was a party, but it was just a celebration of life. And through that, I met one of my first mentors, and her name is Veronica. And I call her Ganesh in the flesh because she looks like that deity. And that's when I got invited to my first sacred medicine ceremony. Not to say that I wasn't experienced with medicines or entheogens, even though the context around it was recreational. It still allowed me to find those dimensions, to find those ways of life in a very different setting. And fast forward to now, I've sat in many different circles. I've done many ceremonies, but
Before we fast forward, let's backtrack just a
all
little
right,
bit
cool,
because you said a lot of stuff there.
exactly.
Um, yeah, I think that's amazing. Connecting to people and cultures through sports and family
Mm-hmm.
and but I wanted to jump into the EDM aspect because I feel like
Okay.
this is something that a lot of people our age can connect with, where their first experience to really connecting to culture or a vibe of people around them that is greater than themselves, but's also positive. Because there's a lot of energies there. The scene's a little bit different now, but I know like a few years ago it was definitely plur. You know, peace, love, unity, respect. You go there, your Rave family is like a family. A lot of people call themselves tribes, and you just go and you connect to the auras around you. And so, what was your experience in the EDM world before you got into ceremonies?
Oh man, it's
Because I would say it's ceremony like.
I was about to say that actually.
Yeah.
So one thing I like to connect and piggyback off on what you just said is your vibe attracts your tribe, right? Same thing with the music. There's so many music genres within that world, so many different kinds of festivals. My first festival was actually 10 years ago. In November, I'm technically going to be regarded as a OG, you know, a veteran, a festival veteran, right? And my sister actually
the rave daddy or
rave, oh, I've been a rave dad. I've been earned that caliber. You know, and my first festival, I was 20 years old, I believe. So I wasn't even 21. My sister Yesenia, she took me to my first festival, and it's called Hard Day of the Dead. It was a huge culture shock. I did know a couple of artists. However, to see how people radically express themselves in that environment, I was like, this is wild. You know, everything was so brand new. It was really overwhelming. I didn't know what to pay attention to because there's so many things going on at once. However, I did remember a moment where I saw my old friend. I bumped into one of my old friends there. I've known him since pre-K. And I'm like, wow. And that's a whole other story. But with that, it allowed me to reconnect with the brother that I grew up with, that I lost that friendship over time. And that just how
that just shows how energies can intertwine and connect. When you're going to a festival, there's hundreds or even thousands of people there. And and then you run into someone that you know. That just shows the energy and the forces.
Exactly. And there's hundreds of stories I could dive into. However, one thing I learned as I kept going to these festivals, I learned that every single music genre has a different archetype, has a different kind of person or group of people that go to these things. So there are stereotypes, there are things that are pretty common in certain things as in music. Right? It's a vibration. That's the thing. It's a vibration and
frequency.
Exactly. So going back as I learned more and more, I noticed that it is a ceremony. Like once you make the commitment that you're going to go to a ceremony, that's when ceremony begins. You got to start preparing for it mentally, physically, spiritually, right?
And people do go and they go for a specific experience, which is depending on, like you said, your vibe, your tribe, your music, your aura, your frequency. If you want to go and headbang, you're going there to release, you know, angers or whatever energy that you need to release out of your body. Or if you go to something like a Calvin Harris, you're there to just feel like a free spirit or be within love. And there's just different, based off of the DJs and sets you go to and the group that you have, you're going there for a ceremonial experience that I feel like you would get similarly if you were to go to a Temescal with a specific group. There's some people that are going for healing. There's some people that are going for love. There's some people that are going to connect to God and the free spirit. So
exactly.
I wanted to draw that connection before we went and talked about some ceremonies, because a lot of people that are going to be watching this, they may want to reach out, they may want to understand, or they just might be interested in their culture. And that's a way for them to feel that initial connection, like, oh, okay, that's the reason why I've been chasing this feeling at a festival, and maybe that's why I want to connect to my culture. And so I wanted to draw those lines.
Absolutely. And one thing that I share with a lot of people is that everything's a pattern. Everything comes in seasons: winter, spring, summer, fall, repeat, sun goes up, sun goes down, etc. Right? So it's the same thing with the way we express ourselves, the vibration from our clothes to the way we speak to the music. That's the common ground. That's an icebreaker. So it's going back to ceremony and these music festivals. You know, if you go to a ceremony, you see somebody with very specific beadwork. You look at it and it's like, oh, that's from the Huichol. That's from the Yawanawa. You know, the list goes on. Same thing, you go to a festival, People wear, apparel. It's like,
Right.
oh, you're a fan of Calvin Harris. You're a fan of whatever that is. People even wear rock band T-shirts. So that's where these common spaces, these big communities, have all kinds of people. But that's where you meet. Your vibe attracts your tribe, right? So if you're wearing, I don't know, you're wearing this. Let's say you take this to a festival. Somebody like me, I see that, and I see your let's say you're wearing some sort of beadwork, and you're next to me like, hey, bro, like I like your bracelet from the Huichol. Boom, we start talking. That's an icebreaker. You see that I know. It's like, huh, and then we start talking about medicine. So you can meet a lot of people that do sit in prayer in these settings. It's just thing is, there's a time and place for everything, right? There's a context. There's a way we hold ourselves. But going back to the necessary thing about the EDM scene, there's a lot of people that take drugs. They drink
Right.
alcohol. And I'll share a little bit about myself. There's been moments where I almost OD'd. And that caused a huge shift because it can snatch you. Like anything. Anything can snatch you, and it becomes a habit, a pattern where you're self-sabotaging. I was going to a bunch of festivals, taking all kinds of drugs. I'll mix and I'll be very, very vulnerable. And I have no
Right.
shame whatsoever because it led me to who I am today. I would drink. I was a huge alcoholic. I would do I would do ecstasy. I would do MDMA. I would do psilocybin. I'll do acid, and I'll mix all kinds of things. And there'll be moments where, I never bought a pack of cigarettes, by the way, but whenever I'll have those moments of break glass in case of emergency, where I'm just not in a good space, I would ask for a cigarette, and I'll smoke the whole thing. So that's when I started noticing these patterns of self-sabotaging, and that switch happened with that surgery I mentioned earlier. And I got sober from alcohol. I don't drink alcohol anymore. I never smoked cigarettes like that. I kicked those hard drugs out of my life. Acid, I don't even do that anymore. Now, psilocybin, that's a whole other thing. Cannabis, that's a whole other thing. I built healthy relationships with those things, and I have no shame saying that I work with those medicines when I need to.
Right.
Whether it's for inflammation, whether it's with meditation out and camping. But I'll pause there because
That is a deeper.
that's a deeper
conversation.
conversation.
Yeah. I do agree. Just to touch on that quickly, there are definitely a lot of medical uses for marijuana, and our body has receptors, cannabinoid receptors, to receive those cannabinoids to give our body medicine. So it is scientifically backed, and all the way from psychological to physical
100%.
ailments. And then a lot of our cultures, Native Americans across the Americas, we use mushrooms and other psilocybin and psychedelic effects for ceremonies specifically.
100%.
And I think it's important to make that distinction because it's sacred to us in the sense that we're not going to take psilocybin mushrooms or peyote to just sit around and have fun, which I feel like a lot of the culture has adopted as like, oh, let's take mushrooms and just go party, or let's go I don't know, walk down the street. And we see it as something like, we're going to take this and we're going to go on a journey, spiritually, mentally. A lot of times we're meditating or we're taking part of a ceremony, not just, kind of sitting there and seeing where the vibe takes us, so.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's set and setting. Huge difference. And the thing is, going back to the way we work, it's not like, let me rephrase that. We don't use these medicines. We work with them. We work with these medicines in a beautiful way. And honestly, the evolution of humans around the world revolve around a lot of entheogens. Ergot with the Greek, psilocybin from all over the world. There's so many traces. We are very related to fungi.
We got mushroom bodies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a whole other kind of conversation. Same thing with marijuana. I like when people call it weed, I use cannabis or Santa Maria. I try to be careful with me personally with what words I say, because in my opinion, a lot of these medicines have been flipped upside down. They've been so perverted by movies, by music, by the wrong people, because it's a program behind it, and they use these things to use against us. Same thing with the coca leaf. What happened to the coca leaf? they completely did something else with that medicine, that beautiful medicine, to cocaine. They eventually evolved to crack.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
that's something else. That's
To
a heavy
destroy
subject.
communities.
100%.
Yeah, definitely. It's like it's a psyop. There's different psyops. Just like when the word conspiracy theory is a psyop from the CIA, because they want to train us to think that anything alternative they call conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm.
Now it just doesn't mean anything. You're a crackpot or whatever.
Exactly.
But they take these medicines and then they genetically modify, and they take a scientific process and they change it from something that came from the earth to now something that's man-made that can destroy our brains and our bodies.
Exactly. So that's the thing about me. Like, I don't watch TV. I stopped watching Netflix. I stopped watching all these things. I'm very careful what I consume informationally through my eyes, through my ears, and what I emit. Because it's all energy, it's all vibration, it's all frequency, and it does program you to an extent. Either it's a placebo effect and things like that. And going back to the medicines, they allow you to see the world in a different way, right? I can't explain what cannabis is like to somebody that's never tried it. Same thing with peyote, with ayahuasca, and the list goes on. You know, these are experiences that we all have different experiences, but there's a lot of relations to it where we can compare some shape or form where it does benefit us, right? So this goes back to the EDM culture, or even certain circles revolving around ceremony, being very aware of what archetypes are attracted to the genre, and not to get consumed by it. Yes, enjoy it, it's part of the human experience, but be conscious enough to not get consumed by it. That goes back to ceremony. There's a lot of people that I need to sit with XYZ to feel a certain type of way all the time. The real work happens after you get out of that headspace, you know, because the world is not on the same vibration if they don't have that experience, and that's okay. That's all two polarities.
Definitely, you got to get out of your comfort zone to grow, because if you're comfortable, you're not growing.
Exactly.
And with the EDM festival, I love how you said that you got to be careful not to be sucked in, because while there is beauty in ceremony, there's also, or in festivals, there's also a lot of mixing of energies. And so then once you get around someone that has an energy space that is chaotic or isn't meant for healing and positivity, it's meant for tearing down and breaking, then when you get around that certain energy, it can also break you. And it has the opposite effect of growth.
Exactly.
And I think that's why when you're doing ceremonies out in East LA and all these different parts where there's people who need true healing and they haven't been connected to their ancestors, they don't have an elder that's teaching them, so they're just coming from a street environment like Watts. Like, it's a hard neighborhood. You grow up with these different negativities like narcissism and self-hate and anti-love, and then coming into a space where you're giving ceremony to people who truly need to heal and are that broken, you're taking on that energy.
It's a lot, and honestly, I think where I grew up, I'm so thankful for that. I'm also thankful for all the work that I've done, not just in festival, but also, you know, working with, you know, with kids, working with teenagers, working with adults, working with thousands of people at a time at the forum for X amount of years. It allowed me to read the energy. It allowed me to see what kind of people arrive depending on the music, right? So, however, the beautiful thing about ceremony and learning these ways of life and how to like be that light within it, you know, we got to go through the dark night of the soul to receive that medicine, to find the light, to have the compassion for people and meet them where they're at.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful, and I have a lot of respect for anybody that has gone through their things and they still have a heart, a very open heart, a very strong mind, a very grounded body. You know, there's a balance, and this is the beauty about even me still going back to these festivals. Like, I only go back to these festivals because I either get paid or I'm called to be of service. That's it. You know, however, when I go to these places, I'm an orb of light. What do I mean by that? I bring sage, I bring copal, I bring essential oils, I bring a certain presence me knowing that people are on all kinds of substances, and when I burn these medicines, it clears the space, and I have a lot of amazing people come up to me and say, thank you so much for bringing the stage, thank you so much for holding it down, thank you so much for being that presence. I appreciate you. And what that does is that allows them to receive that experience, to motivate them to recreate that experience in their own terms. That's what happened with me. I've had so many experiences in that environment and in life in general, where people feed me, where people provide that care, that compassion, where I'm in those spaces where it's not easy. And that allowed me to heal and evolve as a person, to be strong for the next generation. You know, I think that's our duty as humans, to try to leave our communities better than they were before, rather than just taking. There's an elder that I learned, the saying, he's from Hawaii, where if we take 1 cup of water from the lake, we give 3 back. You know, 1 gets evaporated, 1 runs off into the ocean, and 1 goes back into the lake itself.
That is powerful. So when did you start doing ceremonies in LA? I know you were doing some in Mount Shasta, and you do some down here in LA. And how did that get started?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, actually. So let me ask you this: by ceremonies, like me hosting gatherings?
I'm talking about you hosting your own gatherings.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So honestly, it really started with collaborating with other young people like us, you know, and that's how it starts. Community gatherings. It takes a village to create these experiences. I could be that person and do the thing by myself, but it takes a team. You know, whether it's a sweat, you need a firekeeper, you need a doorman, you need someone to do the cleanses, you need the person to do the water, and the list goes on. You know, it's a whole preparation. And not just that, you need people that have a relationship or understand that or are willing to learn and be of service. I'm still a student of life. I never claimed these titles that people try to give me. Personally, I'm a little, I don't want to say I'm against it. I say, like, don't put me on a pedestal. This is why we're in a circle. This is not a hierarchy. We're all masters and students of all kinds of things, right? You're obviously, compared to me, you're a master of film. You're a master of, I don't know, right? I could easily say I'm a master of coaching lacrosse. I've been playing and coaching for 15 years at least, right? So, however, we still teach each other something, but there's a relation there. But going back to what your question was, when did I start doing that? This is I don't want to say it's a hard question, but I gotta know the number. It's like,
well,
how
old are you? Let's start there.
Thanks. Can I curse on this?
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, like there's a saying that a brother of mine says, don't mind fuck it. Don't mind fuck it. I don't want to make shit up either, you know. But going back to the context I'm holding, I just turned 30 in April. So my 20s are gone.
Yeah.
So now I'm entering a new chapter, a new season of my 30s. I'm like, holy crap, I'm 30. Wow, what a blessing.
Well, 30 is young to be already years into hosting ceremonies and this far into your journey.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't come across that until, you know, their mid-30s, their 40s. There aren't that many elders that are out here and leading these ceremonies and teaching the youth. And so, yeah.
That part. So I've been of service for at least 5 years in general. Whether it's firekeeping, whether it's just being a guardian for medicine, whether it's just helping organize events. It's not just medicine. Medicine could be a fireplace. Medicine could be sharing food. Medicine could be music, right? So, but going back to when I started hosting, per se, it's more like I started noticing things within certain criterias. Like there's been people that I collaborated with where beautiful, they gave me an opportunity to practice, to use my voice, to bring the medicine that I carried from the work that I've done, working at the Forum for like almost 4 years, handling operations and production, from coaching, from doing all these other things, from having experience in these festivals, of learning how to like read the room, of how to be assertive, of how to be grounded. You know, and I noticed that there's a lack of discipline, there's a lack of structure, there's a lack of education overall, and there's a lack of being open-minded to teach other people and not be so gatekeepy. Now I'm gonna
Within
pause.
the native culture or the culture in general?
Culture in general,
Okay.
but also in my opinion, these aren't facts. This is just something from what I observed.
Right.
Because, like I said, from all the work that I've done, I learned how to read the room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, am I perfect? No, absolutely not. I never claimed that. However, I wasn't born yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't think age, just because you're an elder, just because you grew up in these ways, doesn't mean you're a good person. Number one, that's something that people get wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I pay attention to how people walk. Yes, you could say the perfect things within the circle. Yes, you could look the part. Yes, you could look like the most native dude or dudette in the space and do all those things. However, if you're outside the circle and you're yapping bad things about people that are brand new
Mm-hmm.
and are really open-hearted, I've seen this a lot, and they have this ego where I'm better than you, that's not good, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Because these places are meant for healing. These places are meant for connecting. These places are meant for us to create a community, because this is what's lacking in our country right now. That's a whole other subject, but there's a huge attack on the family and then all these things. And this is why there's a lot of corruption. But that's a deep subject.
I have noticed a big there is a I'm the most native in the room competition. That's in regards to ceremony. That's in regards to powwows or just those of us who are part of tribes. You got the tribal. Oh, our family is the best. Or in my like, you might have a large family. We all share one name, and then now it's but I'm the center of this family. I'm the epitome. I'm the leader, and it is. I call it micro tribalism. So I feel that in Native culture we suffer from this because we're all one people, in my opinion, from Alaska all the way down to Guatemala. You know, we're all one native to the Americas people, and we're broken up into tribes, and then even before the tribes, before the colonizers came, we were stuck to ourselves in villages. You know, we did have intertribal trade and we did have common languages, and so we were civilized in that manner, but we've always kind of stuck within our own smaller communities. And so now that we're tribes and we become bigger nations in that sense, recognized by the government or broken up by land, now there's micro-tribalism within tribes, where it now comes to the family. At least that's how I perceive things. That's how I see it. When I think we should be connecting.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of places I could touch on, but going back to what you're saying here, it's all trauma-based. It's all trauma-based, and this is why a lot of things are very gatekeep, and there's a lot of things that I don't talk about because I understand why they're kept hush hush, you know. And I don't know who's going to be watching this, but if people go to like my social media, for example, they're going to immediately judge me because of what I'm showing, expressing. It's like, yeah, you don't know what I know either, and that's okay. They don't need to. But going back to what I'm saying here is everything is trauma based, because what happened when the Europeans came? Genocide. They see that you're practicing these ways of life. They categorize it as whatever it is, whether it's demonic, whether it's completely opposed to their religion. So there's a lot of consequences that happen because of that. So there's a lot of fear rooted in that. There's a lot of things that are kept secret because we're programmed that way these past couple of 500 years, actually, or more. I don't know, right? So this is where the intertribal conflicts happen, because it's always happened. That's humans as a whole. But during that conquest, there's a lot of betrayal amongst our own people.
Yeah, like with the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Mm-hmm.
the 5 civilized tribes. You know, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, they funded the churches who came and forced natives onto into those schools, which led to the whitewashing of our culture, the murder of indigenous children. The Pope already did come down and apologize, but that was funded by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which was made up of the 5 civilized tribes who owned slaves. And so the colonizers saw them like, oh, they own slaves. They're the only civilized native culture, and they're the only natives that became recognized. That's like the Cherokee and the Seminole, and there's like 3 other ones, mostly
Mm-hmm.
in like Florida, Louisiana, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's that's all over the Americas, not
Mm.
just North America. It's all over the Americas. All kinds of betrayal in general, and this is still new. This is still fresh, and me personally, to give you a context, I work with a lot of relatives from Oklahoma, a lot of relatives from Arizona that are recovering from these substance abuses. It's because of that trauma, of that suppression of the spirit, and I see how that trauma is still very present
Mhm.
within them, within our communities. Just because our own neighbor isn't inside of a facility recovering for rehab doesn't mean they don't have an addiction. Doesn't mean they have these traumas. Doesn't mean that they don't think about suicide. That's all over the country, not just people who are melanated like our relatives. Even though like they'll look at us like, who are like us talking about like, I'm more indigenous than you.
Right, right.
You know,
And
it's
I,
just
I have light skin, and so I constantly kind of do have to prove my nativeness through knowledge or just saying, oh, I'm actually registered or whatever. I find
exactly.
myself having to like prove myself sometimes. So.
Exactly, and that goes back to the discipline that I'm talking about. I've been to a bunch of circles where there's a lack of discipline.
Mhm.
There is a lack of discipline. There's a lack of structure in most parts, and there's not enough elders to go around to be teaching us.
Because of the traumas and the broken culture that was going on up until the 70s. That's what with the churches.
Exactly.
Right.
Not just the traumas, but you know, like even like to touch base on the temazcal, for example. Not too long ago, that was illegal.
Mhm.
It's illegal. There'll be like, I believe like during the 70s or 60s, they had to go deep in the forest to build the sweat, do the ceremony, complete it, tear it down.
Mm.
And that might have been their last sweat ever. There's people that died for that. There's people that died for these ways of life, and I'm very fortunate, and I don't forget that. I know it. One thing I did learn from a Totelka elder of mine. I have all kinds of elders. I don't have one.
Mhm.
I believe we're all teachers, like I said, right? It's all interwoven. He said, Chalchi, one thing I noticed is that there's so many elders all over, you know, Mexico or below, or here in the States, where they get to a point where they have nothing to fall back on. They have nothing to fall back on, and there's a huge, what's the term I'm looking for? It's controversial, where, and I've received a lot of arrows for this, and that's fine. I'm willing to take the arrows to be that radical change, to bring this information to the best of my ability to people that need it, not just our people, but other relatives from the medicine wheel, from the yellow nation, the white nation, the black nation, etc. We need each other as a human race right now. Team Earth, man.
Yeah.
For real,
Yeah.
like Team Earth. There's a lot of people that lost these ways of life because of the programming. But going back to that is a lot of cultures from South America or even Mexico have been adopted by people.
Mhm.
A lot of people say appropriated, but I learned this from an elder. His name's Quatley.
Mhm.
And he says, I don't like to call it appropriate. He likes to call it appreciated.
Mm.
You know, and I've met a lot of people that aren't indigenous, and they've done the work. And I'm gonna bring up a nonprofit right now, and it's called Dance of the Deer Foundation. I went to a workshop up north a couple weeks ago, and this Caucasian man has practiced the Huichol ways for over 30 years. But his story is like, oh, this is legit. His son, who's older than me, how old are you again?
I'm 27.
So he's older than us. He
Mm.
grew up in those ways. I felt a little weird, honestly, being the only indigenous individual in that workshop. However, respect
Mhm.
for the way, the context that they're holding themselves. Now, a lot of people might get triggered because I just said that. One thing I like to say, and this is where this is what I'm talking about, discipline, that a lot of our people are lacking. Spirit's gonna choose people, however it's gonna choose them to keep these ways of life alive. It's gonna happen, and I'm expressing this because not enough of our people are willing to take that responsibility as a
Mhm.
leadership position. When you're in a leadership position, you got eyes on you, man. You got eyes on you. You got to walk really carefully. Anybody can ruin your life. Coming as a man, man to man,
Mhm.
and this is real. One woman can ruin your life. One person can ruin your life. Cancel culture. That's a whole other subject,
Right.
right? But going back to what I'm trying to say here is, there's a lack of discipline. There's a lack of being that example of what a leader, what we need as a leader in our communities,
Mhm.
right? So yeah, I'm gonna pause there because I'm just kind of
Yeah, no,
splurging.
no.
Yeah.
You were actually on a really good track,
Mm-hmm.
and it was making a lot of sense. Um, so the leaders, right? This is where we're at. Is we are stepping up because there aren't enough people to come in and teach us, and there aren't enough of our own indigenous people who want to step up and take that responsibility because it is a lot of work. For example, like peyote ceremonies. Once you start a peyote ceremony, you're committed your life to going every season. You're going 4 times a year, and you can't stop. You're not supposed to stop. And as you progress and you keep going, you end up leading these ceremonies. You end up being the fire watcher. You end up being the spirit, the light in the darkness while you're there, where
Mm-hmm.
people's spirits are calling upon you and you're helping them out. And to make that sort of commitment to the peyote spirit and into that ceremony and to this life commitment is hard. And um, with the whitewashing of our culture and the killing and genocide of our people, we've lost that connection, that energy that makes us want to do that. To make that makes it a part of our culture. It was our culture and it was just our way of life. Like we were as committed to it as we were to get up and people go to work every day.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of our life work, our life energy. And now since we live in this colonizer world, our identity and our culture isn't tied to these ceremonies anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's tied to I need to go make a paycheck. I need to feed my family. I need to put a roof over my head. And I need to go listen to rap music and see what the Drake and Kendrick beef is about.
Ugh.
And so and so that is powerful stuff to talk about. And feeling called upon by spirit is another big energy life force that once you give that commitment and you feel that connection from spirit, then you'll feel called and you'll have that power within yourself to go commit and do that, which
Mm-hmm.
people don't realize. And then you won't be drawn. I used to love hip hop and rap. Before I started into this indigenous path, this red path, this black path, whatever path that you want to call it, I was really into hip hop. I even wanted to be a rapper for a little bit, and there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with that. But now that I'm further along this path, I don't find myself even remotely interested on what these rappers are talking about
Yeah.
or uh, what the next trending topic is in that culture because I don't want to say it's beneath us because I don't want to demean anyone in that way, but once you think about the legacy you leave behind in your life and what are you leaving behind for your kids and your future, the world you leave behind if you die tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
is this rap about smoking weed or doing pills or gang banging? Is that going to be a legacy that you want to be remembered by? When
Mm.
you're in the sky with your ancestors and you're looking down at your family, your kids, your sister, your mom, their kids, are you going to be happy with what you taught them?
Mm-hmm.
Did you even teach them? you know and so that's why I thought it was interesting that you talked about how there's not enough elders out here.
Exactly, and not just enough elders, but a lot of our elders are disappearing. that grew up without the technology we have today. You know, it's a double-edged sword, and it's a very, very delicate subject to talk about. You know, and going back with appropriation or appreciation, you know, I'm very, very aware, us living in LA County, or at least near LA County, you know, the LA spiritual community, or at least like, it's there's all kinds of people in it. There's also a lot of kind of people in there that do have an abundance of many things, you know, and it's like a lot of people like to call it new age spirituality. And I see how, because I've been in that world when I barely started. I was like 18. My first entheogen was psilocybin, and it flipped the switch. The whole yoga, all these things, and there's a lot of beauty in everything. However, the more and more I got more exposed to it, there's a lot of things I personally don't align with within those communities. And again, this is just my opinion. And just another thing too is to each their own, as long as you're not hurting people. Polyamory, introducing other substances, lack of discipline, that's everywhere, you know. And however, and a lot of people within that circle, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad. A lot of people do a lot of medicine, whether it's ayahuasca and all these things. They even serve these things, dude. But going back to the appreciation or the whitewashing, there's a lot of things that get watered down so much, well, people get hurt. And a lot of those people, even though they have really good intentions, they have no connection or any connection at all to people that practice these ways in a very traditional way. Maybe they go down to Brazil for a week, and all of a sudden the spirit, like the medicine told me to start serving, because they have the capital to go buy it and start providing it for people. Again, to each their own. Spirit's going to work how it's going to work at the end of the day. But what I'm trying to get to is the subject of the matter of forcing things, of finding things, of I feel called to do X, Y, Z. Everything that I do, by the way, right now, unfolded organically. I didn't look for it.
Same.
It didn't look for me. The medicine literally came to me as gifts over and over and over again. I didn't choose this way of life. Same thing with lacrosse. I didn't choose it. You know?
I feel like you did choose it in a sense, because
you're correct. Actually, I did choose it because it was radically different. And I'm like, ooh, I want to hit people with the stick. But it's a martial art, man. But I'll just pause there. But yes, you're right.
I mean, you choose it, maybe not. You woke up as a kid and said, this is what I want to do. But you choose it in your everyday actions, in the way that you perceive the world, and the way that you choose to react to situations. And I feel like spirit will look upon someone and see the greatness within them, and then leave choices in their life to go one way or the other. And you continuously chose the path that spirit was putting in front of you.
Exactly. And choosing the path, by the way, it's been officially a year since I quit my regular job. All the work I've had, every single job I've had, every single thing I've been invited to was networking. Literally networking. How did I start coaching lacrosse? My college coach literally gave me the opportunity. How did I start working at the forum? My buddy said, hey, we got a job opening over here. So like all these things literally unfolded on my lap that allow me to have these tools that I have today, to have the capacity to host community gatherings, like I guess you could say lead ceremonies and all these things. Like it's not really me, you know. It's just it's there, and it's like, okay, I'm being called to be of service.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it's the thing is, I've been given these opportunities to participate in a very beautiful and graceful way. I'm like, wow, like a lot of our people don't have these opportunities, don't have this information, don't have the capital to go to Mexico, to go travel on a weekend getaway because they're surviving, like you said. At the same time, there's a suppression of the spirit where us as humans, our responsibility is to be, you know, self-reliant, to succeed and things like that. However, like I said, with the capitalism and the culture we live in today here in society, there's a lot of things, opposing forces against us, you know, and that's a whole other subject. But this is where these ways of life, this culture, this healing, this common space of the fire, of the earth, of the wind, of the waters, living in prayer, can allow us to open up our hearts to connect with other people that relate in that way. You know, and this connects back to the LA community and the indigenous community. I truly believe my mission, at least this is what I've received, my mission is to be that bridge I understand the LA community 100%, because I, you know, the whole festival scene, all these other things, right? I learned how to communicate. However, I did see those things. Same thing with the indigenous community. What I said earlier, you could say the perfect things, play the part, but outside of it, where's all that? There's also a victim mentality too, right? Here's the thing about that bridge. You bring these rarely common things of the elementals, like I mentioned earlier, and teach that context or embody that in context, not just in ceremony, outside of it, with all walks of life, right? And what that allows to see is you bring this introductory way of ceremony to people within all kinds of communities, not just the LA New Age spirituality community, but all kinds of communities, so they feel called to be curious about it and learn. This is how you attract people. You can't force them. You can't force these things. So going back to the bridge, I actually brought a brother. He's from the Yaqui Nation to Lightning in a Bottle to come fire keep with me, because he grew up in these ways of life. He has his own fireplace in Crestline. I have a lot of respect for him, and the reason I invited him is because, one, I knew we have a similar mindset, and he went through a very similar initiation as I did because we're part of the same men's group that's been around for 20 plus years. It's very underground. Other subject. But the thing is, he too is a bridge. I've had these conversations with him. He understands what I'm doing here. One thing that I'm doing is, as a bridge, people in this community that have the abundance want to not only learn, but also support financially, opportunity, location, environment. This is what our people need. These opportunities, this support. And like I said, it gets controversial because these ways should be kept sacred. These ways shouldn't be so exposed. You should be really careful with doing X, Y, Z. I've had encounters where people come up to me and they think I don't know about certain things. They think I'm really naive, and I don't respond. I just observe. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm really respectful because, you know, I have a lot of respect for anybody that grew up in this way of life, you know. However, that doesn't mean you're a master of it. That doesn't mean you're a good person. Like I said, right? And I'll pause there. So that's my intention, and I truly believe that's what my mission is creating that bridge to the ancient future.
We've talked about a lot of stuff, and I don't want people's heads ringing like, oh my God, it's so much, because there's a lot more conversations that we can have on another time.
Of course.
Yeah. This is definitely not going to be our last conversation. You have so much knowledge to offer and so much experience that I think that we could have a million more conversations, really. But what drug and alcohol ceremonies do you hold? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I'll give you an idea of how I enter these places.
Right.
You know, a lot of these people are detoxing. A lot of these people are medicated. You know, and a lot of people, when they hear me say like, "Oh, you working on, like, were you ever in rehab?" I'm like, no, honestly, the reason I got this job is because somebody gave me the opportunity, because they know what I do. They know the context I hold. They know I hold myself. They're like, you're perfect for this environment. So when I go into these places, I have a regular pillar of like 4 pillars: name, where you're from, intention, DLCs, drugs of choice. And I go first. I always say, whatever we say, whatever we do, whatever we hear remains confidential within the space. And I share first because I take off my battle mask and I want them to see I'm not just a regular dude entering. I'm very transparent. I'm very straightforward. I'm very open. So what I teach in these workshops and these facilities is wellness and bioenergetics. In other words, somatic healing. What the heck is that? How do you connect your mind to your body to your mind, how to express, how to use your breathing patterns, how to use your movement to release these traumas that your nervous system holds on to, that causes pain, that causes thinking patterns, that causes you to do these actions that do self-sabotaging. It's a whole other subject. So one thing I started doing is I started bringing ceremony to these facilities. What do you mean by that? Do I talk about medicine? I do, but not directly. I'm like, hey, do you guys want to check out this documentary on Netflix called How to Change Your Mind? It's out there in the world. Why not? I truly believe that these alternative ways of healing can really help people recover from that. I've seen it happen. That's a whole other subject. But the thing is, one thing I started teaching is a tobacco prayer, how to work with tobacco in a proper way, because a lot of these people smoke cigarettes, they use vapes. But when I bring that and I explain and I go over what this can do for the community to just talk around the fire, this is what we need, just expressing. They appreciate it. They love it. They even love the Sananga eye drops. They love it, you know? So it just opens up their mind a little bit to be more receptive and to be seen for where they're at.
I appreciate you so much for coming out today. It was amazing.
Appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you.